Today, 8 things every reefer should know about selecting the right reef tank lighting.
What we wish somebody had told us day one, because the cheapest way to do this is do it right the first time. Direct answer is that lighting may actually be one of the most expensive purchases that you'll make for a reef tank. So in there is the importance of getting it right the first time. And if you do, it can actually outlive the tank itself. There are options for beginners which end up being cheaper to start with and then scale perfectly with your journey as well. So let's go find them. All right, step number 2 is actually throw everything you thought you know about the brands and all that stuff, or your favorite brands in the trash, because that's meaningless now. What we're actually looking for is, what is it I'm trying to achieve with this light? And the answer to that will help me get the right one, and probably at the best cost.
Coral growth. That is what we're trying to achieve. We want to grow corals. We want them to grow as healthily and as large and as quickly as possible. And the way we typically do that is we say, well, how much par do the corals need? But what do we do if we don't have that par meter?
Yeah, the reality is most of you out there know that LPS corals grow in that 50 to 150 par range, and the SPS are 200 to 350 range. At least that's where most people are the most successful. But it doesn't say that on the box anywhere. No. So how do I transition that without knowing and having to go do an enormous amount of research? Well, one really easy way is actually just look at the watts that they draw out of the wall. You can just go look at the product description and it'll tell you, how many watts it draws. And that'll get you really, really close. And I'll give you an example. We're gonna talk over just a 2-foot area here. But in that 50 to 100 watt range at the wall, we're talking about our Kessel A360s, the Reef LED 50s, the AI Primes, even like a couple of blades. Anything in that range of a total of a 50 to 100 watts, that is going to be your sweet spot. Now for LPS. Yeah, and so what if I wanted a mixed tank though, which is going to have some spots in there in the SPS range? Well, now I'm looking at 100 to 150 watts. This is like your Hydra 32s, your XR 15s. This is even like the Kessel 500X. We're stepping her up. In that range, now we're doing these mixed tanks, which are probably amongst the most popular. But what if I wanted to go to SPS? Now I'm breaking it into a totally different category of about 150 to 200 watts at the wall. This is your XR30s of the world. This is your big, huge panels like Orphix. I think even the Sky is probably in that range. Yep. So now I can actually shop just by looking at the watts. Now the watts, won't get you all the way there, but it's a way, way, way better option. And now I don't have to buy more than I need, which makes it easier to find value.
Number 3, are the spectrum offerings better from one fixture, one light to the other? Absolutely, yes, 100%. But how will you know the spectrum of one light versus another? How are you supposed to know that? Well, the general rule of thumb here is when you're looking at the spectrum offerings, and you can find these oftentimes on the box, you can go online and you can see a spectrograph and you can see exactly what the spectrum is. But when you're looking at that spectrum, you're looking for the blue. You're not looking for little tiny blue peaks, but you're looking for a wide swath that the light covers a majority of the blue light out there.
Yeah, in fact, I would say go to their website, go to the product page, go wherever it is, and find out, just look for it. If it's a tiny little peak that looks like a laser beam or the Eiffel Tower, it probably isn't the best one. If it is a big wide blue band, it probably is amongst the best ones. And there is a couple reasons for that. In fact, I'm gonna go one more further. If you can't find this data on the website, just skip it all entirely. Either they don't know or they don't want to tell you. I don't know which one it is, but in either case, just skip it. But what you're looking for is this thing called, it's a mix of nerd talk of nanometers and then normal talk of just color. So what you're looking for is light blue, which is around 470 nanometers. So light blue, 470. Okay. You're looking for a deeper blue, which is royal blue color, which is about 450. Okay. And then you're also looking for violet, which will go all the way down to around 390. And these are just kind of rough areas. Well, so I'm now covering a wider span. Not only will that show up in coloration of the coral, because they have those colors to actually show, but there's also biology in the sun. So the sun actually covers that whole area, right? It doesn't have just a little weird peak in there. It covers the whole area. Your eyeballs can't really see it in many cases. But why does it matter? Because first, the sun, these things evolved around the sun. And as we know, biology doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes over a long period of time. Yeah, very, very few. But the reason why that biology is you call it, violet light. What we'll call it is chlorophyll A light. So this is where chlorophyll A within the zooxanthellae actually absorbs like light the best. It's in that violet range. You may call it like blue light, but we're going to call it chlorophyll C2 light, which because that's where chlorophyll C2 actually absorbs lights the best. And you may call it light blue, but we're going to call it predominant light, or an area of the carotenoid zone. So these are the things of like the chlorophyll and the carotenoids is where they absorb light and then pass it and turn that light energy into glucose and glycerol for the coral. So if we just provide one of those things, this coral is going to have to widely adapt its biology. So we know that the sun, we know the known biology about chlorophyll and carotenoids, but we also know is success, which is all of the most successful lights out there that produce the most successful tanks out there, all have big, wide blue bands. Now, here's the good news. There's many, many options out there today that have wide blue bands out there, and some of them are even adjustable. So like, for instance, if you picked up like a Radion, it will have a big, huge blue peak in the middle, but you can actually tune it down just a little bit and it becomes wide, but it gives you the ability to change those colors. So it actually has all of that stuff down there. But there are lots of options to have it out. But let's pretend, when I'm watching this video and I realize I bought the wrong thing now and I have the Eiffel Tower, you can actually fix it now with, throwing stuff like the blades and stuff on the side, or really anything. And I will say, I specifically say the blades are fixing it because there are other light strips out there, but most of them are actually just adding more of the light you already have, which is this like Eiffel Tower thing. So we don't really want more of that. We want to actually expand it, and then options like the glow gets into that chlorophyll A zone, and the grow gets into that light blue zone, or carotenoid zone. So spectrum does matter. There was a whole lot of talk here, but like basically all it's telling you is go look at that chart. I'm looking between 390 and 470 if you got numbers there, or I'm looking, if I don't have numbers, between violet and light blue. And that's how I know I got a light. And right here, I'm gonna tell it to you, buying it right to begin with is way cheaper than fixing it later.
Number 4, does size of the light matter? Yes, absolutely. The best approaches here are going to blanket the tank in light and reduce shadows.
This is probably one of the biggest follies as we went from like halides and T5s and stuff to LEDs is visually your eye can't really tell. A tiny little light that has a fairly wide angle looks like it's illuminating the tank. But if you actually get the meter out, you'll find out that it's just
shadows everywhere.
It's just shadowing. Like there's no way around it. A little light like this is easily shadowed. Light's not getting through. But if I have a big, huge, giant light, the obstruction, it hits it from both sides. It's just the way it is. And so just for a reference point, we find that the shadows generally reduce the PAR by like 75%. And you'll just see that like you'll get these weird abnormally shaped corals that like one of them grows where there's light and the other one
or dying on the side even.
It just doesn't grow right. And then it's like dead underneath and the inner shadows, because if you put your PAR meter in there where the shadows are, it could be like 5.
Nothing.
Size definitely matters, but size doesn't have to be the only thing, because you could get a big giant light like a big time T5 fixture on the top. That's one way to manage that kind of horizon to horizon size matter conversation. There's another one where I can just get wide angle lights and I can space them about every 18 inches, which kind of blankets the tank. Not quite as well, but also less obtrusive. You can also take, well, damn it, I already bought those like little pucks. And I hear what you're saying and I'd like to fix it. Well, then throw in fill light on the sides of them, creating 3-point lighting that kind of matches the sun and the sky. Works really well. So this is the point where I wish, like if there's one point in here, we have a one point at the end, but I'm gonna give you one right now. I wish that if everybody just heard this and we could just like embrace it and adopt it, we'd all be so much more successful, which is we need to blanket these corals in light from all angles. If we do that, you'll be a way, way, way more successful reefer, and it'll help you pick the right options.
Number 5, there are 4 approaches to accomplish what we just discussed, each of which has benefits but will work differently. And the first one of those is modular lighting. We're talking about things like the Kessels, Radions, Hydras, Mitras, Reef, LEDs. Some of those are definitely the most popular. These are generally smaller modules, right? And you space them between 12 and 24 inches apart. And these are great for a lot of reasons.
These are like number 1 most popular as
Absolutely.
picked by you guys for sure. These modules, they're great because visually, man, they're really low profile.
Slim.
The whole top of the tank's open. I can get in there. The stores love them, man, because it's just one box on the shelf, really easy. They're just really, 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 really popular. I think the biggest fallacy, though, here is that we tell everybody to do them every 24 inches, at least the box does. But really where people have the most success is when they're about like every 18 or 12 inches. But I gotta tell you, one of the things that makes them probably the most popular is these modules are really, really easy to mount.
So easy.
And we've polled people many, many times, and the answer is always the same. What's most important to you? Is it coral growth? Is it coloration? Is it like 80 million things? And the number 1 always comes out is easy to mount.
Easy to mount.
And so these are easy to mount. Now, like the only part of this is you know that you're not doing this as well as a big blanket of light. So how do I, make that a little bit better? And it's probably by spacing them every 12 to 18 inches instead of every 24 inches. And you will see this in every tank of the month. Nobody is spacing them 24 inches apart. So if you go look, just go to, if you want to know what people are doing for lighting, go to Reef and find the tanks of the month and just look at them one after one. Not a single person is doing it that way. So 12 to 24 inches will be your best bet if you're going to go with these really easy to install modular lighting.
Number 6, the second approach here are large panels or fixtures. And honestly, these should probably be more popular than they already are. We're talking about the Orphic, the ATI Stratton, Reef Breeders, Bank of T5s, Philips Coral Care, and Neptune Sky being some of the most common.
Yeah, these are large light sources that wrap the corals in light with fewer total modules, which means in many ways they're cheaper because they can actually be the same amount of LEDs and the same cost to cover the same area, in which case now like 1 every 24 inches is very legitimate. Okay, the reason though that I think that they're not that popular is because they're big in a world like small. And you just don't know any better until somebody like really, really drives it home, man, that bigger is better. You're just not going to do it. And the reality is some people actually might know bigger is better, but would prefer actually just to achieve that through more small ones. They know, and that's why they're willing to invest in 1 every 12 or 18 inches instead of these big guys. Okay, but I think the real reason gets back to that thing. The number 1 determining factor for most reefers is how easy is it to install. And most of the ones that you just said are kind of hard to install. Like you're gonna have to drill holes in your ceiling. You're gonna have to, they don't really come with like leg mounts and stuff. I mean, the Philips Coral Care, which like really should have been one of the big winners, is, I think it's like 20 some pounds.
Wow, that's heavy.
It's in that neighborhood anyway. It's heavy. It doesn't have a bracket. I had to figure out how to mount it. And right then, a whole bunch of you just checked out because that's just not right. Now, the one exception to that would be the Neptune Sky, which happened to be smart enough to loan the bracket fitting from the Radion, which is interesting. But you can now use just the bracket kits that are already there. They have a same hole pattern. And I guess I would tell you that when I talked to the people there, that they said that they would have liked to see this hole pattern become the universal pattern. So the mounts out there work for everything. If you'd like to see that, let everybody know. But outside of that, like most of them are really hard. Neptune one being one of the outliers in there. These big modulars should be more popular than they are, but really the reefers just haven't adopted them at large scale yet.
Number 7, the third approach to achieving that end-to-end light are modular fixtures. These are just light bars that you put together and you combine them to create one large fixture. We're talking about the Reef Brights, the Orphex, and the AI Blades are some of the most popular and the most common. The benefit here is you achieve end-to-end light that absolutely wraps and envelops your corals in just a blanket of light. Some of these are also really easy to mount. The AI blades, for example, can either be mounted just directly on the top and the edge of the glass, or it comes, with some legs that can raise it up a little bit. I'm betting something that these will become the most popular way to do lighting as the hobby evolves.
My first experience with this was actually, they sell a little bracket we could bolt a bunch of Reef Bright XHOs.
Yeah.
When we bolted those together and put them on the E170, everybody in the room said, why have we never done this before? Why is this not more popular? Because this outperformed most of the things that we tested. Okay, so I was really, really shocked at that point because it did really, really well. And it's all those things the fixtures, part of the problem that fixtures, big ones, aren't really popular is because they're really hard to distribute. Like fish stores don't want to stock every available size of all this stuff, and you guys aren't buying it, so it just doesn't make any sense. But these things these little blades that, like you said, just rest right in there. I mean, the mounting doesn't get any easier than that.
No.
And then the legs are optional. You can buy them afterward, and they just go a few inches, and you just set it right on the top. It doesn't get easier than that. And if I just put 4 of them in there, then it's the same thing as a fixture.
Yep.
In fact, what we used to think about as T5s is a fixture, but really it's 8 light strips.
Yep.
Each one of those
right.
bulbs.
Think about it. Yeah.
It's just a light strip. And so it's really just kind of recreating that kind of thing. I also agree. This is super, super easy to install. And now that the lights that are coming out aren't just limited to creating a spectrum that is designed to be supplemental, they're now designed to actually light the whole tank. This will probably be one of the more popular options going forward because it solves so many needs and it's easy to install.
Number 8, the fourth option for achieving that end-to-end light are hybrids. The most popular being a 3-point hybrid, where you take one single point of light that emulates the sun, and then it is flanked on the sides by larger strip fill lights, which emulate that blue sky, kind of filtering all that light and enveloping that coral. This is often a cheaper way to do things with better shadow reduction and even more spread than the modules alone. Also, if you tend to already have one of those smaller modules, you can upgrade by buying a couple other larger strips so you don't have to go out and buy something completely new.
Finally, we get to talk about my favorite option. This is my favorite option for a couple of reasons. One, I really like the idea of emulating the sun in the sky at the same time. 2, all of my best tanks have been installed this way, with one exception. The 750 XXL is radion spaced every 18 inches. That one has actually done phenomenally well. But other than that one, almost all of my tanks have been 3-point lighting solutions, and one of them is because I care what it looks like. I want this tank to come alive. I want to see the shimmer. I want it to look like when my face is down in the water snorkeling or diving, man. I want to see that rhythm and movement come to life. And there's just no way to do it other than creating that single point of light that you can kind of tune the shimmer to exactly where you want it. So some of my favorite options would be the Kessels that are paired with something like the blades. We've done Kessels in T5s many times in the past. You could do Kessels, or we could do Radions, like the XR15 matched with the blades. In that case, in our testing, we actually found that this thing had a really huge sweet spot.
Yeah.
It was super even. That ultra wide angle light coming out of the wide angle module, then filled in with the blades, was a really awesome solution as well. So the really cool part about this one is most of what you just heard today, if you already own lights, you're like, damn it, I bought the wrong thing. This is a case where if you already have modules, man, I can just throw those strips in and I can upgrade what I already have to today's standard, which makes it one of my favorites as well. We said we were going to do 8 things, but we're actually going to do 9 because I just talked about Shimmer and I'd love to share a little bit more because you can actually know what you're going to get ahead of time as well. There's 5 types of Shimmer. There's Disco, TV Static, Chaos, None, and what I would call Perfect. Okay. And you can pick any one of those things. So Disco is actually when you see like little bits of color shooting all over the place, like a disco ball, and you just see red and green and all these things just shooting around all over the tank. And it doesn't look like shimmer if you look close. It just looks like things are going crazy.
Random color.
Yeah. Okay, so you can know ahead of time it's because they're using these like lenses on there. Like each LED has this pretty specific focus lens on each one. And what that does is creates a beam that reflects off of the little ripples on the surface of the water, shoots these colors all over. So if it has those lenses, specifically these lenses that like are like really common in commodity like LEDs, or like these little round discs. You know, if you see those things on it, I know for sure it's going to have disco. There's another thing called TV static. This looks more like that fuzz, like when you used to watch like analog TV and you go shh, or if any of you guys even remember that anymore. It also almost looks like little ants running around the tank, and it's like this fuzz on the tank. Okay, that is created when you have tons and tons and tons of low power LEDs, right? And so there's just all these little points, and there's so many of them that it has a little bit of movement, but it looks more like fuzz or static than anything. There's also what I call chaos shimmer. So this is the Kessels alone for me, which is just the one Kessel by itself or a single point of light like that. And then if you have a bunch of those Kessels, there's just so many sharp lines because there's no skylight kind of filling in or buffering it. And so what it does is it just looks like really sharp, and there's just like a lot of rhythm and movement. Some people will love it. For me, it's just a little too much. There's another kind of shimmer called none.
Oh, a none.
Yes. Can you tell me what none looks like a little bit to you?
Yeah, none is literally when you look down and you don't see like any movement on the bottom. It's usually what just a large like bank of T5s will accomplish that, where there's not a single point of light, and you just look at it and it just looks beautiful, but you don't see any shimmering.
Diffused lights will do that in many cases too. So like the sky here will do that. Anything you kind of put a diffuser on will mute the shimmer a lot. And the way that everybody describes it is a tank with shimmer looks like you're snorkeling. You got like a little piece of Fiji sitting behind you in your house. A tank with no shimmer looks like a picture of a reef on your wall.
Yeah, that's kind of doing it.
Almost like the fish are just kind of like floating in thin air in this picture. It lacks like an element of the environment that it was really in. The last type of shimmer is the one I would call perfect. So perfect to me means single points of light, like the Kessel is one of them. I bet you the Red Sea would fit in this pretty well. The XR15 fits in this pretty well, but single kind of more compact sources of light that create a lot of shimmer, and then the fill lights of the sky in there on the sides, providing that like kind of atmospheric blue light on the sides of this thing. Now what it does is it softens the shimmer, right? And now I can actually tune it. So like with something like the Kessel, I can just go more shimmer, less shimmer, perfect shimmer. And that is one of the things you can look for when you're deciding what you want to buy.
My number one takeaway today is beginners, don't worry. For years, I've recommended simple fixtures like the AI Prime because they're affordable and they're easy to set up. It's a great way to get started. But if you watch this video and you're like, man, I really like to blanket my tank, no problem. All you need to do is pick up something like these AI blades, set them in front, in the back of the tank, and you solve the problem.
All right, my number one takeaway from here is, again, we've used a bunch of examples of light in here, but it's not so much that you need to use the things that we actually just said. It's take that knowledge and then decide what is the right tool for the right job for you. What are you trying to achieve? And if you actually do that, you'll probably get the right thing. For me, I will say that the Kessel banked by the blades, or like a Radion banked by the blades, or even maybe a Reef LED banked by the blades in the 3-point lighting is going to be my favorite in a vast majority of cases. I will say though, I've seen these installed with just the blades and creating that modular fixture format. And the nature of these things is they have these little pucks of LEDs in there that are inside of a diffusion pane, and it creates shimmer, and then it lights up that acrylic lens to create its own fill light as well. And so I think a lot of people are going to really like the shimmer out of this one single option as well. All right, what's next? Time to learn how to install lighting. Let's get that right the first time too.
And all of our best of Reef tank lighting playlists right here.